Our last lesson focused on the first group of disciples, Andrew, John, and Simon Peter. Verses 43 through 50 will tell about the second group of disciples, Philip and Nathanael, who is also called Bartholomew in the other three Gospels. And although the Gospel of John doesn't mention it, you can also include in this second group James, the brother of John, and Thomas, because all of them lived and worked as fishermen in the small adjacent villages along Lake Galilee. The other three Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, provide much more information on the calling of the first disciples, on the actual history of how they were called. John's Gospel, however, is more focused on presenting Jesus as the Son of God, which he clearly states in chapter 20, verses 30 through 31. In his disciples' presence, Jesus performed many other miracles which are not written down in this book, but these have been written in order that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through your faith in him you may have life. Now, this statement is really, really important. Here, John is telling us the purpose for writing his gospel, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Son of God, and that through your faith in him, you may have everlasting life. So how does a person have everlasting life? How does a person get to heaven? Is it by being good enough? By going through the right rituals and sacraments? By going to church every Sunday? No, no, and no. Then how can a person have everlasting life? How can a person get to heaven? Only by believing that Jesus is who he says he is, the Son of God. Is that all I have to do to get to heaven? Well, yes and no, because there is true belief and there is false belief. And the best example of this dichotomy is when Jesus tests his disciples in chapter 6. When times were easy, many believed in him. But when times got tough, many stopped following him, stopped believing in him. So at this point, Jesus had already gathered 7 of his 12 disciples. Remember, the word disciple simply means student or learner. It is different from the word apostle, which means one who is sent, specifically sent by Jesus to preach the gospel, the good news that the Messiah is here and that there is forgiveness of sin through him alone. Next, we see the calling of Philip and Nathanael, starting in verse 43. Jesus sees Philip and says, "Follow me." This is a very common invitation by Jesus. In fact, he will use this exact expression, "follow me," over 20 times in John's Gospel. And when Jesus says, "Follow me," he doesn't mean for a little while, but rather, follow me for the rest of your life. It's a lifetime decision to follow Jesus, both then for his disciples and now for us. As for Nathanael, this friend of Philip is about to have his mind blown by the supernatural powers of Jesus. And really, this could be considered the first miracle we see in John's Gospel. Nathanael goes from complete skepticism about Jesus to overwhelming belief in him in about 30 seconds. It's one of the fastest conversions of any disciples. Let's watch this scene unfold.
The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip. And said to him,
"Come with me."
Philip was from Bethsaida, the town where Andrew and Peter lived. Philip found Nathanael.
We have found the one whom Moses wrote about in the book of the law, and whom the prophets also wrote about. He is Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth.
Can anything good come from Nazareth?
Come and see.
When Jesus saw Nathanael coming to him, he said about him, "Here is a real Israelite."
There is nothing false in him.
How do you know me?
I saw you when you were under the fig tree before Philip called you.
You are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel.
Do you believe just because I told you I saw you when you were under the fig tree? You will see much greater things than this. I am telling you the truth. You will see heaven open, and God's angels going up and coming down on the Son of Man.
Upon hearing the good news from Philip, Nathanael sarcastically asks, "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" The small village of Nazareth was held in disdain by everybody in the entire region of Galilee, just as Galilee was looked down upon by the city people of Jerusalem. Nazareth was a poor village, populated by uneducated, unsophisticated fishermen. In fact, a neighboring village, Bethsaida, literally means house of fish in Hebrew. Jesus says to Nathanael, "Here is a real Israelite. There is nothing false in him." The Lord is drawing a stark contrast between Nathanael, who has a humble, submissive heart for God, and the prideful, high and mighty religious leaders of Israel. Nathanael then asks Jesus, "How do you know me?" It's as if to say, "I've never seen you before in my life, and yet you claim to know me? How is this possible?" Jesus then reveals, "I saw you when you were under the fig tree before Philip called you." Completely shocked, Nathanael then exclaims, "Teacher, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Well, something spectacular must have happened while Nathanael was sitting under that fig tree, because he immediately changes his mind about Jesus. One minute he says, "Can anything good come from this impoverished, lowly town of Nazareth?" In the next minute, he boldly proclaims that Jesus of Nazareth is the Son of God, the King of Israel. Now, a little about the term Son of God. In ancient Hebrew culture, the expression "son of" simply meant that you are of the same nature. It didn't mean that Jesus is God's actual son, like, "Come on over here, Junior, and sit on Daddy's lap." Rather, it means that Jesus has the same nature as God. They are both eternal. They are both omniscient, or all-knowing. They are both omnipotent, or all-powerful. And both of them are perfectly holy and righteous. Later in chapter 8, Jesus will say to the religious leaders, "You are of your father the devil," meaning they had the same nature. They, like Satan, were full of lies and had murder in their hearts. So suffice it to say, Nathanael was convinced that Jesus was the Messiah, to which Jesus responds, "Do you believe just because I told you that I saw you when you were under the fig tree? You will see much greater things than this." And then he said, "I'm telling you the truth. You will see heaven open up and God's angels going up and coming down on the Son of Man." And some versions say, "Who is the stairway to heaven?" The Son of Man, who is the stairway to heaven. Funny that there's a song called that and it has nothing to do with Jesus. So, what does Jesus mean by all of this? Jesus tells Nathanael and the other disciples with him, "I saw you under the fig tree because I am omniscient. I know all things, and I am omnipresent. I am everywhere, all the time. But just wait, stick with me, and you'll really see some amazing miracles." Then Jesus says for the first of 25 times in John's Gospel, "I am telling you the truth." Whenever he says this, he means, I am about to say something unbelievable, amazing, incredible. And what is this amazing thing that Jesus tells Nathanael and the others? You will see heaven open and God's angels going up and coming down on the Son of Man. What is Jesus talking about now? Well, it's time to pull out the Old Testament to find out. Here Jesus is referring to Jacob's dream in Genesis chapter 28, where the angels went up and down from heaven to earth on a ladder. God told Jacob that he will fulfill his promises and always take care of him by opening up heaven and sending down angels to help him until the covenant with Abraham is fulfilled. So, what Jesus means is, hey guys, over the next 3 years that you're going to be following me, I will show you miracle upon miracle upon miracle, everything that comes from my Father in heaven. You are going to see heaven open up, and you are going to see the power of heaven flow through me, the Son of Man. Okay, we explained Son of God. Now, what exactly is Son of Man? This term always baffled me. Well, this is another Old Testament reference. It comes from the book of Daniel, and Daniel uses the term Son of Man to refer to the future Messiah of Israel. So whenever Jesus calls himself the Son of Man, he means, hey, I am the Messiah, the Christ, the Anointed One. And just like Jacob's dream, angels will surround my ministry. Do angels really surround the ministry of Jesus? Well, yes they do, and here are some examples. An angel spoke to his mother, Mary, and also to his earthly father, Joseph. A chorus of angels announced the birth of Jesus to shepherds in Bethlehem. Angels attended Jesus after his temptation by Satan, and that can be found in the Gospel of Matthew. Angels appear at his resurrection. And just as Jesus was being arrested in the garden, he says to Peter, "Put your sword away. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels?" Well, that wraps up chapter 1 of the Gospel of John. We will begin studying chapter 2 in the next lesson. Thanks for watching lesson 12 in the Gospel of John learning series. I hope you now know Jesus, our Savior, a little better.